Finally, we have got HiFITS. HiFITS basically, again, is talking about change. Remember, the reason why change comes in a lot with leadership, as opposed to being to do with managing people, is because leaders are there to have the big picture for the organisation, and they often have to persuade people that they need to change. They often have to identify in the first place that change is necessary. So a good leader will say, we need to change because this is how we're going to change. So HiFITS says, you can see at the top, the traditional model, leaders have all the answers. That may sound familiar because that's what Taylor said. That is what Fayol said. Remember, with both of those, the manager decided, the worker did what they were told. HiFITS says that what you should actually do is you should help the worker and let the worker come up with the solutions for themselves. Now, that is very, very important. In theory, that sounds like a really good idea, because presumably workers know what needs changing better than managers do. After all, the worker is the person that's doing the job. However, that will only work if you've got the right kind of employee. If you've got the type of employee who is happy to do that, then you've got no problems whatsoever. So if you've got the kind of employee who is happy to think, I've identified an issue, it needs changing, why don't we do this? Then great. If you've got the type of employee who basically says, I am not going to come up with any ideas, you're the manager, that's your job, then HiFITS isn't going to work. So it links in with the kind of people that we recruit and select that we saw back in the very first sections. So HiFITS says that there are two kinds of change. Technical changes, for example, there is a new type of technology which means that we need to change the way we do something. There is a new kind of computer program that we are going to adopt, which means we need to change something. So technical changes, to a certain extent, not always, but to a certain extent, technical changes are forced upon you. You have to do this because. On the other hand, adaptive changes tend to be small. They tend to be ongoing. They are often changes that you decide that you are going to make. So a technical change could be a very large change that you make occasionally. An adaptive change could be lots and lots of little small changes that you make almost continuously. So particularly when we're dealing with adaptive change, you can see HiFITS suggests that we carry out the following. First of all, we have to recognise what is the problem. So we have to recognise that there even is a problem. Before anybody wants to change anything, they have to know that there is something that needs changing. So what you might need to do is you might need, remember you're the manager, you might need to try and get your workers to think about, is there a problem at all? So perhaps there is a problem with the quality of the work. How could you persuade your workers that there is a problem? Well, maybe pass on to them comments from customers. Maybe get them to go and look at the customer returns department to see how much work they have got. So persuade them that something is wrong. It then says application of appropriate pressure. What we are talking about there is we are basically saying that we need to persuade people. We need to persuade the staff perhaps to look for a solution. Now, what I mean by that is that if you just say to the workers, there is a problem with the quality, fix it, work out how to come up with it, they may come up with a very good idea, but one that suits them. The manager has to also think about, will it suit other departments? So one way to improve the quality might simply be to spend 5 times as much money getting better raw materials. Now, the workers might come up with that idea and think that's a brilliant idea. The trouble is the finance department won't think very much of that. The purchasing department won't think very much of that. So one of the things that the leader might have to do is perhaps try and push the workers towards looking at a particular way of improving quality rather than a different way. Remember, the leader is not going to tell them what to do. The leader is trying to make them look at a particular area, concentrate on that rather than another one. The focus bit basically means that we have to concentrate on changing. That might mean that, for example, I say to the workers, on Friday, you are not actually going to produce anything at all. On Friday, you guys come in and we're going to spend the day thinking about how to improve the quality. What you may have to do is you may then have to take the workers away from their regular job. Because you know what it's like, your regular job often takes up all the time that you have. So you don't get time to think about what you would like to change. You're too busy just getting your work done. So maybe you have a day where you say to everybody, you're not going to do your regular tasks, you're going to look at this instead. Maybe you even take them out of the office. Take them somewhere else where they can't be distracted. And finally, the idea of ownership basically means that you let the workers come up with the ideas. Now, that's a very powerful thing. We will see that again later on in the course. Ownership is a very powerful idea because if the workers come up with their own ideas, they are much more likely to be enthusiastic about them. They will be carried out better. They will be carried out quicker. If the ideas are imposed on the workers, so in other words, if the manager says, this is what I think, the workers may do it, but only reluctantly. So ownership means you actually let the workers come up with their own ideas, which also means you have to accept what they come up with, as long as it's not too ridiculous. But you can't go around saying, what do you think? And when the workers tell you, say, that's a really good idea, but we're going to do what I want. Won't work. So ownership, let the workers come up with their own ideas. Even to the extent of when somebody comes along, somebody from another department, maybe an even more senior person, comes along and says, that is a really good idea. Whose idea was it? The manager shouldn't say it was theirs. The manager should give the credit to the workers because that's where the ideas came from. So ownership is a particularly good idea in this particular circumstance. So the idea that Heifetz is getting at is, rather than the boss coming up with the ideas, as Fayol and Taylor said, the manager puts in place a way that the workers will come up with their own ideas and then the ideas get implemented. Now, as I say, that's very different to what we had as the ideas 100 years ago. It also means you need a different kind of worker. So 100 years ago, Fayol and Taylor wanted workers who would do what they were told. Heifetz wants workers who will do what they think is best and come up with their own ideas, which is not necessarily the same thing. Now, again, I hope you can see that even though we've got lots of chapters that we've had so far, the ideas start to come together. So Heifetz relies on you having selected the right people in the first place. Heifetz relies on you having trained the people so that they can do all these things, maybe develop them with these skills so that they can come up with their own ideas in the first place. Heifetz relies on the fact that up to now, as a manager, you have been talking to your staff, you've been worried about what they get on. So in other words, you've been doing the team and the individual part of action-centred leadership. Heifetz relies on the fact that up to now, you might have done selling ideas to them, so talking to them and explaining, or you might have consulted them, asked them what they think, or you might even have joined in with them already. Because the reason is, if you have a task-focused manager who was only ever told the workers what to do, I'm the boss, this is what you're doing, get the work done, and suddenly they try and do what HiFITS is saying, it won't work, because the workers just won't be used to it. The manager will find it difficult to ask the workers what they think, and the workers will find it very difficult because they're not used to the boss asking them. They may not even want the boss to ask them. So HiFITS relies on lots of other parts of the syllabus that we've already looked at being done correctly that will lead up to it. So when we are talking about F1, it is very easy to put things into lots of little boxes. Here is leadership, here is recruitment, here is development, but really a lot of the ideas go together.